what are pollinators? Well, you look at this. Pollination is the act of transferring pollen grains from a male anther, that's the male part of a flower, to the female stigma. So the anther is here, the pollen is transferred via a pollinator, and the pollinators are primarily insects that fertilize plants, result in the production of seeds as well as fruit, okay? So this is the process of pollination. The whole idea here is, why is pollination important? We're about to find out. The next slide is, I mentioned to you before that I want you to know the difference, right? So honey versus native bees. See, honeybees are not native to the United States or to Tennessee for that matter. They were introduced by Europeans in the 1600s, okay? So native bees do the vast majority of our pollination. They're twice as effective in producing seeds and fruit as non-natives, and they're kind of a bit messier when we talk about it because they carry pollen as dry grains all over their body. So they kind of cover themselves, and we'll talk about how they do that, but they cover themselves in the pollen and then they transfer it through the process. It is a very humorous thing because it's kind of like they get all covered up, right? And then they do a significantly higher pollen removal, pollen disposition, and visit frequently, and I'll show you their bodies and why that is actually possible, right? So the competition for floral resources is one hive competes with 100 native bees. So that's the importance of why you want to have native bees and be aware of native and non-native bees, because there's an actual competition happening, right? So bee morphology. I know the kids might not be absolutely fascinated by this, but for the adults in the room, this is pretty important. They have several different parts, and what's most important that you need to know is, like most insects, there's a three-part system. There's a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, right? And that's gonna be almost in all your insects, right? But there's additional elements such as the antenna, the compound eye, the front leg, the middle leg, the hind leg. And what we always highlight with bees is they have 4 wings, 2 pairs. And so that's not always noticeable. And so that's why it's important that you be looking at this and pay attention to that. They often have rounder bodies, right? They're usually hairy, as we mentioned before. We're gonna talk about why they're typically hairy, right? Antennae are long and elbowed. You know, they kind of have a curve to them, right? And then bees are an incredibly diverse group of insects. Some look bee-like, and when we say bee-like, we mean they're hairy or they're yellow and black, right? But they do come in different colors. They do have stripes. Sometimes they can be brightly colored, and we'll talk about different ones that have a multitude of colors. I would be remiss when we went to plug this in, we opened this up, and there's some wasps in there. So be careful for the kids right there for the wasps. But that generated a memory for me that I need to be making a distinction for you between bees, flies, and wasps, okay? All different type of insects, and we want to highlight. So flies have large eyes, usually near the front of their head, and they have a short, thick antenna, right? The contrast is, I showed you the long antenna for other ones, right? Wasps, we'll do, okay, flies here again, right? But we'll do, wasps have a narrow body and usually a constricted abdomen. You know, when I say constricted, you see, notice here, there's like a big part and then there's a smaller part, right? Again, we highlighted that they have 4 wings, right? Wasps have 4 wings and they're folded lengthwise. They do not carry pollen loads, and some grains can be stuck to a wasp's body, right? They have long ovipositors, right? What's an ovipositor? Well, you're here to learn here today. An ovipositor is a part of an insect's body that stores eggs or is for the implantation of eggs, right? So you see this right here, that would be a long tube that they use to deposit those, right? And that's on the bronchi wasp there. They have stripes or colors on excessive exoskeleton, but no hair, okay? So again, the contrast between bees is wasps typically don't have hair, right? And so that's a paper wasp there. As I said, we're here, they're usually not hairy, right? And so you can see right there, these kind of up close here. So I just want to set a contrast between flies and wasps as we talk about the native bees, and the difference of, you're not just learning about the morphology of bees, but you're learning about the morphology of wasps as well as flies as well, right? We're talking about pollinators, so we're going to talk about different pollinators as well. But again, the focus of this presentation is bees. The fly on my computer, so I can notice, see that right there. I do want to highlight that in this morphology, we want to use some vocabulary terms here, right? Scopa is carrying dry pollen on dense hair on the hind legs, and this often happens with, we're going to go over these, but sweat bees. This happens with mason bees, mining bees, and carpenter bees, right? Corbicula, right? That's a vocabulary word for you, right? A pollen basket, right? And it's an enlarged, maybe this is not displaying. Oh, no. I want you to see that because that's on the bumblebee. That's weird that that's not showing. Enlarged flattened plates on the hind legs carrying moist pollen. And female, I did the, it's not one of those that flies in. It's not a transition. It's supposed to just render it, right? And again, I'm using this off of the Wi-Fi, so it should be. I mean, all the other, look, these photos all appeared, so I don't know. But that's a, I mean, that's a key thing I want to highlight because I want them to see that female bumblebees they pollinate, they do nest building, and then I'll talk about the different ones, about how their life cycle. I want you to think about some as annual, just like we do with plants. I want you to think of some bees as annuals, and I want you to think of some bees as perennials. I'll give the distinction in a second, right? But this is the process, right? Larva has no resemblance to the adult. You can see that, right? There are 4 stages, so I hope you walk away for the children. There are 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult, right? And each female creates her own nest inside a sealed provision cell, 1 generation per year. That's probably the big takeaway for kids. So it's like, it's only one, they only live a year. That's it. And only active for a very short period of time. And they emerge when their favorite plants are flowering, right? So remember, I paused for a second. The reason this topic engages me that I'm interested in it from a naturalist standpoint is the evolution of both bees and flowers together, and how this pollination process plays a role in it, but also how they interact with these different plants in terms of having a host plant and other keystone species, okay? And different species emerge at different times. So I want to highlight this too. When we talk about bees, a lot of people think about honeycombs and they think about socialization elements of bees. Well, 10% of bees are social bees, right? That form small colonies. And 90% of bees, this is a fun fact for you here today, 90% of bees are solitary, okay? Solitary bees are like leaf cutter bees, right? Or cuckoo bees, right? The ones that are social are usually communal, and we think naturally of something like bumblebees, right? And there's a big photo of bumblebees, and you see them all together. You see when it's communals, the sweat bees, they're kind of underground, ground nesting, and then you see the contrast with solitary bees, right? So I'll pause for a second, slowly. 90% are solitary. 10% are social.
What does solitary mean?
Solitary means you're alone. Not alone, but you're a single bee that lives and does work by yourself. Okay. Communal would be the opposite. You're part of a larger colony or a group of people, that a society that you build together, that you serves a common purpose. Thank you. Excellent question. Yeah, excellent question.
Is the bumblebee considered a solitary?
The bumblebee is a social bee. Yeah. Yep. Thank you for asking that question. So here's a list of them. We won't go into the list of them, but right here, to answer the gentleman's question, bumblebees are social. They produce annual colonies. Pollen is collected on the corbicula hind leg specifically, which is why I wanted that previous slide to pop up so we could see it. And we'll contrast that with something like the mining bee, which is solitary. It ground nests. It has a single nest. It has hair on its head, as the thorax, and the pollen collection is through the scorpa. Okay, so just setting that 2 contrast there. So for the kids in the room, this is the visual slide, right? Native bees. What's a native bee? Well, a native bee is the American bumblebee, the sweat bee, the mining bee, ground nest, and you see they do plant stem and cavity nests, carpenter bees, mason bees, and leafcutter bees.
So there's your corbicula.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, well, that's the little thing. Yeah, pollen basket, right? And so, very important part. Again, I wish it had come up because that's key to this conversation here about how they're pollinating. So thank you for that. Ground nesting bees, right? You think, well, I don't know. I didn't know bees do ground nesting. Well, sweat bees, mining bees, these little digger bees, and these cellophane bees all do ground nesting, right? And you ask this question. This is like the little neighborhood, right? Ground nesting bee neighborhood, right? So you got the bee resident here. Then you got the solitary bee nest, and this is kind of how it's structured in the ground, right? And then you have the bee resident. And see, I like this photo because you see in this one, it's not like a yellow bee, right? It's a brightly green colored bee, and that's just to highlight that bees come in different colors.
Are yellow jackets wasps or bees?
Yellow jackets are wasps. Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. And that's also why I wanted to point out bees versus wasps and flies there, because many people see yellow jackets and they think it's a bee, but it's not. And that's why I tried to highlight the different morphology of the bee. So if you know the body structure of a wasp, you're less likely to confuse it with a bee. So great question. Thank you.
This is the easiest way for non-educated people to identify as the hairiness.
Yes, and usually the shape. I think the shape, to me, the shape is that body of a wasp, where it's not just a single, it's a
Really skinny.
yeah, yeah. And so I think if you're at a distance, that's what you're gonna notice. Like I'm looking at that cord and that wasp in there, yeah, and I can see like the body is different from a bee. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was like a nesting example is right here. Yeah. So again, great question. Yeah, I think that's the most easily identifiable thing. You see something and you can see like the body doesn't look like a bee, right? I don't know if you're gonna be able to see the hairs, right? Like I don't like you got like a monocle, you know, you're the Mr. Peanut or something. So stem nesting native bees. I want to highlight this, right? Again, 1 year life cycle. So I tried to get for the children like actual photos here, right? So this is the actual photo, right? And so you see this 1 year life cycle. And again, it applies to mason bees, it applies to leafcutter bees, and these small carpenter bees, which is one of the children mentioned they see a lot of as well. So bumblebee nesting habitats, right? I'm showing you this because in this latter half of this presentation, I want you to be able to understand. You got a question? I'll pause for a second. You got a question?
I don't have a question.
Okay.
I learned about second grade.
Wow. Okay, that early? And where did you learn it? And is that in school?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you remember them telling you? Okay, that might have been and yeah, there you go. Do you have a question? How do they make eggs? That's a great question. It's on the very next slide, 2 slides from here, okay? I'll come right back to that, okay? I want to first talk about where they live first, right? So here, we're talking about nesting habitats. They live in brush piles. That's little sticks in your yard. They live in dry plant material. You can see they're like in crevices of plants that fall from the trees. They live in old bird houses sometimes, you know, any cavity you think over there, or bluebirds one, rodent burrows, random fibers, and bases of grass stems, right? So the annual life cycle is new nests are founded each year by a new queen. So that person, like again, when you're like in a community, the communal one, you have a queen, and the queen finds a new place every year. You think about it as moving into a new house every year. Yeah.
How did they like get on the ground?
Well, they have 2 sets of wings, 2 pairs of wings, right? So they fly on the ground and they live in these little holes, and they create a community with other bees in the hole, right? And so that was that diagram of like, it's a whole, imagine like a colony. You don't want to use the word colony. They kind of sort of, they like bury themselves in it, and they create like a whole structure underneath, right? They're not like, you know, ants they create a whole underground community, and they take trash out and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But they create a whole structure underneath ground, yeah.
So do bees like collect like poppy seeds or like pollen?
They collect pollen, not poppy seeds, but they collect pollen. Here.
From like poppies?
Well, they have that's a great question. The child highlighted. Each bees have host plants. So insects have a specific plant that they like and that they drink the nectar from and get the pollen from. And so it's like having a favorite food. Do you have a favorite food? We'll talk about what bees, not like pasta, but what their version of pasta is, okay? So For this one, you have a yellow-faced bumblebee, right? And again, mating with the new queen. So I'll get you this up-close photo, right? And someone takes this, and they typically emerge in late summer. So I'm trying to give you some seasonality on some of these specific types of bees. And they do not return to the nest, right? They live this solitary life where we asked them before. Solitary in this case is they're sleeping on flowers. They're not like in a community underground with other bees, right? They're literally moving like transients. They're moving from flower to flower, sleeping. And again, I'm highlighting both their habitat, but also the short life spirit on that, right? It's 1 or 2 weeks, you know, after they made it, right? So one of the biggest highlights of my presentation for today is I wanted to talk about buzz pollination. Buzz pollination is when native bees vibrate their flight muscles to shake the anthers in a process called sonication, okay? Sonication, when we humans do it, we take a little electric toothbrush and we put it next to plants and we have it vibrate and it knocks off the pollen, and then we take that pollen and transfer it, right? But bees have a natural process of doing this, right? And the vibration producing bees are the native bees. So I'll pause for a second. Honeybees do not buzz pollinate. So this is unique to native bees, right? And again, why is this important? Blueberry flower, bumblebees, tomato flower, mining bees. So this is what's happening with tomatoes, blueberries, cranberries, I think, as well, and a variety of different fruits and vegetables that we love so much. This is happening. And if you remember in my presentation, this happens with native bees, and it's a higher yield than with other non-native bees. So this is one of the important things that they're capable of physiologically. That's why I told you about the morphology, right? They're able to do this with their flight muscles. But then what the production of what it produces is it produces higher yields. And again, I'll restate, that's why native bees are Tennessee's agricultural insect, because this produces higher yields, which has an economic value as well as a societal value. The societal value is get you fruits and vegetables.
Can I say one thing about
Yes, please.
Guys, do you know, like, you have a tomato plant that has little yellow flowers on it? And do you know how those flowers turn into tomato?
Cause they get in the water.
They get water? Yeah, so the bees carry pollen from one flower to another flower, and it's without the bees, it's the pollen does its going from one flower to another flower, and they'll just stay in flowers and then they'll die. So that's why bees are. Make sense?
Bees are also important because they're very, very specialized. They're specialist insects. 60% of pollen specialist bees are rare. And then the second one is 25% of bees native to the eastern United States are pollen specialists. When I say pollen specialists, I'm referring to 3 different types of things. Monolectic bees, mono means one, right? So these are the pickiest eaters. They strictly collect pollen from only one species of plant. That's what I was talking about, host plants, right? This is like ironweed longhorn bees or spring beauty bees, right? Oliglectic bees, right? These are slightly less picky, you know, less, we were just thinking about with the children, less picky eaters, right? They collect pollen from only closely related host plants. And these are things such as the sunflower longhorn bee and their relationship to aster plants, right? And last but not least, generalist or polylectic bees. Poly meaning multiple, right? The Latin root being multiple, right? And they collect pollen from many families of plants. And again, the most common example for this presentation is going to be bumblebees. Bumblebees collect pollen from multiple different types of plants, okay? I just want to make one more thing on this. Monolectic and oliglectic bees. Why did I give you that word? Why did I present this to you? Well, because as I described it, reduced availability of floral resources is going to be a major driver in a decline. So if you only eat one thing, and that one thing is endangered or it disappears or it's in short supply, that's going to affect your food supply. That's going to affect your ability to eat and survive and make it through a period, that 1 year period that we talked about, right? And basically that's because your diet is not diverse, right? These bees are particularly sensitive to the amino acid content of host plants in the same way that we are particularly susceptible to diseases and things that happen when we don't get the essential amino acids in our body. Remember, we have essential amino acids that we must consume every day for the production of enzymes as well as muscle. And last but not least, amino acid content affect both the pollen affect their microbiome or their digestive system as well. So bee gut health, when it applies to nutrition and immune health, is very, very important in their ability to survive and thrive, right? Yeah, we got a question?
There is something right there.
That throughout this presentation, I've described to you what it is. Based on the presentation, excellent. I feel achieved and accomplished. Life has meaning, okay? Good job. I have a prize for you. I will definitely give you a prize. It's gonna be multiple prizes, but that's an excellent, astute observation. Wasps do sting. They have stingers. Not all bees sting. That's in the presentation, right? Sting after you're dead? Oh, after they're dead. Yes, that is correct. So just be mindful of that, okay? So don't put your head too close to it. Don't let others get too close to it, okay? But yes, thank you. I feel like I made a difference today. So I'm gonna go through the seasons really quickly. Spring, we're gonna talk about bees in the spring. I welcome you all to come back to Obit River Park in Grossville, Tennessee, to do a wildflower walk with the soil conservationists for the Cumberland County. I recently came for a wildflower walk, and there are beautiful flowers out there. So I want to relate that presentation with this presentation. Spring Beauty Minor Bee is a solitary bee that it is active in March to May bloom time, and it's in forest and woodland and suburban areas. It is attracted to the Spring Beauty. Digger bees are often attracted to, the southeastern blueberry bee is often attached to the blueberry plant as well. This was where we were talking about bees having flowers that they're attracted to and specific plants that they're attracted to.
Do you have a question?
Okay. Yeah, but I'm trying to hold questions off because I don't want to anything.
What do bees like?
Okay. We're going to talk about that very, very soon, okay? We'll get back to that. Spring. Willow specialist mining bee. So this is a bee that's attached, or host plant is pussy willow. And then the violet minor bee. It's called the violet minor bee. So can you imagine what plant it's attracted to? The wild violet. So I hope you see that the wild violet is an April-May nectar guides on petal and bearded side petals. So this one right here eats the nectar from that specific plant. So a violet minor bee is attracted to the wild violet plant. Do you see that? Violet's like a very bright purple color that's very, very beautiful. And that lady right there will walk you through the park and find them for you and have you look at them, and hopefully you will see some bees as well. So tell your mom to find that lady. Do that with them multiple times. I guess I'll do them one. Summer, as we go into summer, bee balm short-faced bee. It's a specialist bee. It's a tiny sweat bee. They're solitary, ground nesting. But I want to highlight that the Monodana specialist sweat bee is the Monodana flat. Here we go. Common milkweed, a very common one. Generalist bees are attracted to milkweed blooms in June and August, and it only offers nectar for visiting insects. Pollen packaged in strictly sticky sacs, which we're going to show you the little sticky sac that they have, right? And how they're attracted to that, right? So common milkweed, and you see the bee on it. And you see an up close photo there. So this is what he likes. This bee right here likes this plant. So that's what they eat.
My mom's grow milkweed, and every time I had bees, they just went to town.
Yeah, they really like common milkweed. Butterflies also like common milkweed as well, okay? So I'm gonna try to keep it on time. We're gonna save questions to the end, but I will address all the questions. I just wanna get a little bit past summer on here. Black-eyed Susan, which is a keystone, plant here. Coneflower mining bee is the one. And you see how look how much he's covered in it. He's so hairy, he's covered in it. And this one, sunflower. Yep. And then we'll just do fall really quickly. So aster specialist bees, you got the aster mining bee that's attracted to smooth blue aster. You got the ironweed longhorn bee, which is paired with the ironweed. And the reason I'm showing you this is I had a game. We are short on time, but I had a game that was going to test you on all these pairings to see how well you remembered These specific ones. But we're short on time, and I have a whole bunch of questions to answer. So I just want to get through the seasons here. We did spring, we did summer, we did fall. And what I'm trying to illustrate to you is bees are unique because they use this thermogenesis. What does thermogenesis mean? It's the same thing it means in humans. It means activities that generate heat. And the reason that's important is they're able to survive in cooler climates, in the mountains of North Carolina, in the eastern part of the United States, because of this process. And so that makes them more active during the winter as pollinators. And the second one is it makes them more active during the beginning of the day when it typically is cooler in the fall and winter months. So I just want to highlight why we were going through the different seasons with you here, right? They're also goldenrod specialist bees, right? And so you see how this is the September females provision the nest. The asters bloom in August and September, and they create these solitary, they're both solitary and ground nesting here. I'll pause for photography. So here's a kind of summary of what we just looked at, right? Native host plants for pollen specialist bees, Echinacea the coneflower, 6 specific bees, false sunflowers 5, Evelyn Primrose 7, and keystone plants. You heard me use that word before. Keystone plants for pollinators. Well, this goldenrod, you're gonna have to remember that for your prize, sunflower, black-eye seasons, and tick seeds. These are all extremely important for not only the fruits and vegetables that we eat, but also for the environment as a whole and getting these flowers, as well as the role that they play for bees and other pollinators as well. You'll notice that when I say other pollinators, I have the list of butterflies that play a role here as well, because this presentation is about pollinators. So we're talking about butterflies, we're talking about other insects as well. Bats are pollinators and so on and so forth. So I always, as a conservationist, I have to have this slide here. I have to remind you that why are bees declining? Well, I kind of hinted at it a little bit before. Habitat loss is one. When you mow your lawn, you don't provide the foliage and other different plants that the ground nesting bees would nest in, right? Loss of native plant diversity. That's why I highlighted the native plants in the previous slide, right? I talked about different types of bees and how they pair. And so if you have one specific plant that is your host plant, and that plant, there's a lack of diversity, or that native plant is gone, then that's gonna have a butterfly effect, no pun intended, on the additional insects that require that resource for foraging, right? Monoculture. Mono means one, as I said before, a single culture in agriculture. So having specific types of one plant in an environment is going to play a role in your ability to a lack of diversity that's going to hurt insects, and specifically bees. And then obviously we talk a lot about this one. Insecticides, herbicides, and fertilizers are unnecessary, right? In this situation, these are going to just add to the die-off effect for different bees. And then I was going to talk about some specific insecticides. I guess we don't have to do it, but they're called systematic insecticides, right? And this is when the seeds of plants are coated in these specific insecticides, and they're absorbed into the seedlings, and then they infuse into the specific plant. And that's bad in this situation because they can be toxic to the bees in this situation. So I always include a slide like this. If you've been in my previous presentations I've done, I try to give you some kind of comparison here, right? Honeybee decline, right? Well, 2024 to 2025, a record US honeybee year for loss of bees that year, 34 to 90% losses. The average was 55%, and this is for honeybees, right? The worst impacts were on commercial operations, right? This is from the Apiary Inspectors of America. This is where this information is coming from. Native bee decline. When I say native bee, we covered it a little bit. We're talking about the rust patch bumblebee, endangered. 28% decline in bumblebees. So the one we know, the generalist one, 28% decline. Leafcutter bees, 50% decline. Mason bees, 27%. 30 to 50% of native bees are highly specialized to native plants, and when they disappear, it threatens the actual bees themselves. Loss of native plants equals loss of specialist bees. That's what I'm trying to communicate to you here today. If we have less native plants, then we have less native bees. Without the bees, plants can't reproduce, and as we said, they disappear. So I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure I get all the kids' questions out the way. So I'll say, I always want to be proactive in these presentations. It's not supposed to be depressing or tell you how many bees died or anything like that, right? This is supposed to give you this information so that you can utilize this information, so you can be a better human, and so you can be more proactive about your efforts in any way that you choose, freedom and liberty, to do. So how do you support bees in your garden? Well, I said this before about the lawns and the monoculture, right? You let that stuff stay, right? You don't spray it. You don't use insecticides. You don't use herbicides. You don't use fungicides, right? There are a multitude of ways here where you can help the environment. Oh, that's my matching game there. You can help the environment. I show this one where you leave foliage and branches so that you have something to nest in during winter months or fall months. You can have bird boxes where you can be proactive about that. We set their cavity nesters so they nest in that. You can have different little things near your garden that encourage pollination of plants like that. And most important, I went out with Janet Dolan out in Catoosa. You can use, whether you use roundstone or tennis seeds or whatever you want to use, you can plant native species, plant native plants, and that will, as we said from this presentation, attract different native bees as well as the broader pollinators as a whole. So I think I'm looking at the time here. I just did this in about 40 minutes, so I'll pause here. I'll take questions from all the children, and I'll get that gentleman who pointed out the wasp a prize for this. And for anybody who wants to, you can come up here after the presentation, and I have some seeds that I want to give you as well, so that you can be proactive about what I said here. They're all going to be native plants, right? Native seeds, right? So that you can plant your garden and you can encourage both pollinators as well as native bees. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you. Don't all rush at one time. You? Yeah.
Bee? Sometimes.
They do.
So where do they like?
They hide where they live. So if you're hiding, you're gonna hide where? Where do you like to hide? In your house? Okay, in your hiding spot. Well, they have hiding spots, right? And so you're right about that. But most often they hide where they live. So if they're ground nesting, they're gonna hide underground in the ground. If they're in a colony, they're gonna hide in their colony. That's why you don't always see them during the day. You, gentlemen, sir.
I have a question.
Yes,
I have a fact.
okay. Please, lay it on us.
Okay. Did you know that drumbees don't sting?
I did know that. Did you know that? Okay. You, sir.
When bees can go and freeze also, and they might come out.
You're absolutely right. I attempted to show photos of bees in trees and coming out. They also utilize bird boxes and other cavities. And so specific bees live in that. So just be mindful of that when you're outdoors, okay? That you're looking for that, and as that gentleman said, drones don't sting, so keep that in mind as well. But yes, keep in mind that they can live in cavities. We're saying cavities, but they can live in trees and other, holes in trees, yeah. You, sir.
A perfect example of bees in trees is actually, you know, those old Berenstain Bear books where they go.
Is it Bernstein Bears or Bernstein? No, sorry. Okay, that's the one of the little family of bears, right? There's a mama bear and a daddy bear and a little bear. Yeah.
Bee tree.
Bee tree. Okay. Well, you be mindful of those bee trees, okay? You.
Tying a bee alive. How can you know they are like their bodies are shaped?
Well, you have to, that's a great question. You have to look at them very closely from afar. And you look at things that will help you remember. So you look at color. So yellow or black would be a certain type of bee, or they could be green, or they could have a little round body. They could be hairy, and they're always gonna have two pairs of wings, but you might not always see that. So it's just looking at the characteristic, what's another word for characteristic? Shape of the bee. And that'll help you know what type of bee. Usually color is going to be your primary thing, right? You know your colors? Primary thing would be colors. You like pink? I don't know if there are any pink bees in this presentation, but yeah, that'd be cool if it was a pink bee. You, sir. It's not a bee, it's a wasp.
There's a bee.
Oh, a bee over here?
Ant carrying a bee.
Ant carrying a bee.
What the heck?
That's not the ant carrying a bee.
It's a bee right there. It's on.
Yeah.
Killed the bee and it's carrying
Well, okay. Yeah, take it back on here. All right, are there any questions from the adults? Yeah. You say why? Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. They got to it before you did, right? Yeah. Yes, young lady.
Am I right that wasp sting?
That I'll have to follow up with you on that one.
Jackets and red wasps?
I believe that is correct. Yeah, I was gonna say I think I've heard of bald wasp. Yeah, but I don't know of anybody. Yeah, I was gonna say, and then there's like the subcategory of hornets, right? So. Yeah. I'll get back to you on that question though. I'll get you information. I don't know everything. I want to know everything though. Are there any other? Yeah, you young lady.
I have the longest day alive. Like, how many bees sting versus like how many don't really sting?
How many sting and how many don't sting is the question?
Well, I'm sure there's like tons of bees, but like, do most bees sting?
No, it's the opposite. Most bees don't sting. Yeah. I mean that's. Yeah.
Aggressiveness,
Yeah.
a one factor
Correct.
determine that. I mean, yeah, most of the other bees, they're not going to care about it. I mean, but if you stepped on it or something, yeah, I don't think so.
The one that I know from homeschooling, the example they always give me, or at least I know from Chris Light of Eastern Tennessee, which is that picture for your children, picture the mascot for the team, the Charlotte Hornets, right? It's a big, the blue, but it's a big hornet, right? And it has a stinger. And so we always point out that like the female is going to have a stinger. The males don't. So the idea is you go to somebody like that, you say, your mascot's a girl. And they go, no, it's not. And it's like, well, it's got a stinger, so it's a girl, right? So that's the kind of thing. And that plays into our example, because when people think about a bee and they think about stinging them, they're concerned about the stinger. But remember, only that queen is going to have that stinger, right? It's going to be all the male drones, as the gentleman pointed out, are not going to have a stinger. So it's that proportional relationship of more bees don't sting than the ones that do sting. But then it's going to vary by species, because certain species are going to have more drones than a queen. So, well, 2 more questions here. Yeah.
And I also have another fact.
Okay, I'm open to all these facts. I'm not the only one presenting here. Yeah, everybody else is here too.
There's a type of wasp.
Uh-huh.
Male big wasps.
Male fig wasp. Okay. Ooh, I like this. Specific.
For 24 hours.
24 hours. Whoa. So they get everything done in 24 hours? Or? That's my call back to you. 24 hours, that's a productive bee.
Every minute they're starting to die.
Well, but you saw that little life cycle. That means they have to live, they have to build a nest, they have to get nectar, they have to procreate, and then die. All in 24 hours. How much do you get done in 24 hours? No, it's okay. There you go. Yeah. Okay. That's because your parent takes care of it. Who's the parent? You. Yeah, so you're doing all the work.